Okay, let's start. Good evening, everyone, and we are welcome. My name is Yulia. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today we are talk about the key updates for Homes for Ukraine scheme and the Ukraine permission extension in 2026. Our goal is simple. We want to share with you a clear and reliable information and help understand what these updates mean in practice. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce Opora. As you may know, Opora is a UK-based digital charity. In Ukrainian, Opora means support. So we help people understand how a system works in the UK and where to find reliable information. We share guidance, practical advice, and support through our online community, informational resources, and well-being project. Our goal, as I told before, is to help people feel more informed, more confident, and more supported while living in the UK. And before we start, a few quick webinar guidelines. The webinar will last about 1 hour and 30 minutes. Please write your questions in the chat. Our speaker Galina will answer all your questions at the end of the webinar. Please do not share your personal data in the chat, and the recording of this webinar will be available later on Opora website and Facebook group. If you need any technical support, please write in the chat as well. So I'm very happy to introduce our speaker, my colleague and Opora volunteer Galina Rezhenko, who will guide us through today's updates. So Galina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Yulia. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. So we have quite a packed agenda, and as Yulia said, we will share all the material afterwards, so you can pass it on to anyone else who's interested in sponsoring Ukrainians in your community. But generally, we'll go through the Ukraine schemes, what they are, which schemes are still open and which ones are closed, because there is a fair bit of confusion about that. I'll dive deeper into Homes for Ukraine. So what is the current process of sponsoring? What are the requirements? What to do when your guest application is delayed and everything in between. Then quite a hot topic, which is the visa extensions, the program called Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme, or UPE in short. And specifically, I will cover mostly questions that are relevant for sponsors, because there are, again, quite a few. One of them, obviously, is what happens with thank you payments. And then finally, what to do next with your guests when their UPE ends, or if they want to maybe stay in the UK or switch to other visas. So please write your questions in the chat. Yulia will pick them up, prioritize. If you like a question, please thumbs up on it again in the chat, so we can pick the most popular questions. Quick disclaimer, obviously, it's a volunteer information session. I am not a lawyer, so please do not treat it as a legal consultation. So with that, I will jump into the intro to Ukraine schemes. And as I said, there were quite a few, and still there's a lot of confusion about which schemes are open, which schemes are closed. So here is a handy table for you, which explains exactly that. So there are in full 5 schemes related to Ukrainians. Some of them are closed already. Some of them are not yet open. So starting with Ukraine Family Scheme, this scheme is closed, and it was working for people from Ukraine with a UK-based family member, either British or settled in the UK. This scheme is closed, not much to say about it. You cannot apply anymore, but people who already got those visas, they still have them, they can extend them under UPE. Then same applies to Ukraine Extension Scheme. Here the naming is very confusing because Ukraine Extension Scheme and Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme are not the same. I'm talking about the old Ukraine Extension Scheme, which worked for people who were already in the UK with a valid visa. Let's say they were on a business trip when full-scale invasion started, and it wasn't safe for them to return to their home in Ukraine. They could stay and switch to Ukraine Extension Scheme. The scheme also closed in 2024 for most people, in February 25 for UK-born children. Not much to say, it's closed. Homes for Ukraine, this scheme is open and there are no announcements from the government whatsoever suggesting that it will be closed anytime soon. The war is still raging in Ukraine. There are no reasons for this scheme to close. However, the requirements and the conditions for this scheme changed throughout this scheme's existence. Initially, visas were issued for 36 months, so 3 years, but starting early February 2024, the period of this visa was shortened to 18 months. So all the new visas issued since then and now are only valid for 18 months, not 36. And this scheme is open, as I said. Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme. This scheme works for people holding all 3 previous schemes, Family Extension and Homes for Ukraine. It works for all of them equally and allows them to extend their stay in the UK for another 18 months, so 1 year and a half. This scheme is open since February 2025, and a couple of months ago, government made another announcement saying that there will be yet another Ukraine Permission Extension. We call it UPE2 for the lack of better name, which will give eligible Ukrainians 24 months of further extension. This scheme is not yet open. We do not know much about it yet, except for it will happen. So we are expecting announce and more details about it in Q2 of this year. So that's an overview. I hope this is useful and will reduce some confusion. And I'll jump to Homes for Ukraine, also named Sponsorship Scheme. So this is the main scheme for Ukrainians who want to come to the UK. And the requirements are rather simple. So your guest, if you want to sponsor, they have to be a Ukrainian or an immediate family member of a Ukrainian. So they might be, let's say, from Belarus or from any other country. But if they are not Ukrainians, they must apply with their Ukrainian family member or apply to join them. Second important requirement is that this person must have lived in Ukraine as of January 2022, and UKVI visa service will require evidence of that. We do have a list of eligible documents, but it can be basically anything that bears their name on it, their address, or place where things happened should be in Ukraine and date. So, for example, vaccination certificates for COVID are a great example. Any bank statements where you can see transactions happening in Ukraine during this time, early 2022, with the name of the applicant, your guest, also count. So basically any set of documents that can prove that the person ordinarily lived in Ukraine early 2022. Obviously, they have to have a named eligible sponsor. The word named here is because there used to be special programs of Scotland and Wales that were called super sponsorship schemes that allowed people to be sponsored by the government of Scotland and Wales, respectively. So people coming under those schemes, they didn't have a named person when they applied. But those schemes closed back in 2022 and never reopened. So currently, every person coming under Homes for Ukraine must have a named eligible sponsor, and they must apply outside of the UK from any country. They might be already in Poland, Lithuania, Romania. They can apply from there. They can apply from Ukraine. These application centers, they are everywhere in the world, I think more than 100 cities. So it's quite easy to find a nearby visa application center. And very importantly, Homes for Ukraine visa is free of charge. So if your guest wants to apply, this is the link on government website, and there is just one button, one green button saying apply. So they will not get lost. For sponsors, I have to say that the requirements for sponsor eligibility have been tightened early 2024. So previously, prior to February 24, Ukrainians on temporary visas could sponsor their relatives, and it helped many Ukrainians reunite with their families. However, after the rules were tightened, only British, Irish nationals or people with settled status can sponsor Ukrainians. The only exception is for Ukrainian parents sponsoring their children under the age of 18, though in those cases they can still sponsor their children even if they have themselves only a Ukraine scheme or UPE visa. Second requirement for sponsor is that they have to be over the age of 18. They must be based in the UK. So if you want to sponsor someone, you have to live here, and confirm that they can provide and will provide accommodation for at least 6 months. Now, guests may or may not stay with you for the whole duration of this period. They may move on to a rental accommodation earlier, but the requirement for their visa approval is that you are willing and you have the ability to provide a suitable accommodation for at least 6 months. And this is subject to accommodation and DBS checks. And again, for sponsors, it is also free of charge, so you don't have to pay for anything. Government has a pretty elaborate sponsor guides collection on gov.uk, so you can follow this link and read everything in detail. Now, for the application process, it's actually quite simple. So it's your guest who has to make an application. They apply online, and they have to make a separate application for each guest, regardless of their age. So even a tiny child will have to make their own application and provide a full package of documents, including evidence of them living in Ukraine, if they were born earlier than January 2022. Then they will have to go to the visa application center. And before going to the visa application center, the gov.uk website will redirect them to their cabinet online profile on visa application center's website. And there they can upload their evidence. If they forgot to upload or had any difficulties, they can bring copies of those documents to the visa application center. Generally, they need their passport, evidence of living in Ukraine, sponsor's passport, or if sponsor doesn't have a passport, then a photo driving license and birth certificate. And if, as a sponsor, you are not British or Irish national, then they will need a share code proving that sponsor has settled or indefinite leave to remain status in the UK. At the visa application center, they provide their biometrics. Usually it's a photo and fingerprints. For young children, it's just their photo. And that's it. They wait for a decision. They no longer need to go to the visa application center again when their visa is approved, because all the visas are issued in electronic format. It's called an e-visa. So basically, when they have a letter of approval, they can go to go.uk website, log into their UKVI account and see their e-visa. They generate a share code proving their immigration status, and this is what they need to cross the border. So it's quite streamlined compared to the first months or years of the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Now, for sponsors, most important thing that I wanted to mention, and this is something that confuses many sponsors, is that actually as a sponsor, you don't need to submit any separate application. You may assist your guest in filling in their applications, but those applications are submitted in their names. It's technically them submitting an application. You don't need to register. You don't need to register your interest. All you need to do is respond to your local council when they attempt to contact you. Say that, you are aware of the guest application, you indeed want to sponsor them. Keep your contacts up to date. Let them visit your home to check if there are enough rooms for your future guests. And sponsor plus all the people above 18 years of age living in the property will need to pass the DBS checks. DBS check is basically a document saying that you don't have like a criminal record, your history is clean. Now, also one important thing that will likely save you some money, you don't have to submit and pay for your DBS check. Local council will do that for you and they will cover the cost. So I myself acted as a sponsor once, and when I asked them, they basically told me that they will not accept a DBS check that I have already. They will do their own and they will cover the cost. Well, then they will visit your home. In my case, it happened quite quickly, maybe a 5-minute walkthrough to show them our like the area where my guest will live, our bedroom. They had some questions about smoke detectors, so I promised that I will install one. We installed that the next day, sent them a photo, and I was approved as a sponsor. So that's a pretty quick process. You don't have to be stressed about it. Quite easy. Now, with regards to the accommodation, it can be your own home, but also if you rent and you have spare room, you can sponsor as well. But in that case, your landlord will need to prove in writing that they do not object to a new person joining you and being sponsored. So that's your process. Mainly wait for the email or phone call from your local council. And respond to what they say. Now, moving on to how long does it take? So bad news is that there is no standard processing time. So for many other visas, UKVI or Home Office, they do have and they do publish standard processing times. And if you are if your application is beyond that, you can complain. So it's more or less standardized. For Homes for Ukraine, it's treated as, well, we need to process those as soon as possible. In practice, it takes from 1 to 4 weeks. In my case, for my guest, it took about 10 days. So that's not too long. And most of the applications, they kind of fall within this period, 1 to 4 weeks. The countdown starts from the date when your guest provided biometrics at the visa application center. Technically, until they provided those biometrics, UKVI cannot see or process that application. It's a draft, and it is only complete when the biometrics are submitted. So that's when you have to start the countdown. Some applications, they get delayed. 2-3 months. The worst case I've heard of was 12 months. Now, what to do if that happens? Don't panic. It's all right. It can be resolved. First of all, ping your local council, because sometimes it's a human factor. It happens. The person doing the security checks and checks on your accommodation, they could have uploaded everything, but just forget clicking the click submit button, and they don't know about it, but your application review has not started. So ping your local council, ask them to check if they indeed submitted everything to the UKVI. If they say, yeah, we did, then your next point of contact is the UKVI hotline. Now, there is no dedicated hotline for Ukraine visas anymore. So you call the general hotline. Number is here on screen. And there you have to follow the menu, get to Ukraine visas. You will have to provide your guest names, as in their passports, numbers of their applications. For each guest, you will provide a separate application number. You should know those. Date when they submitted an application and visited this application center, and ideally their email addresses, the addresses associated with their applications. Then usually in a week or week and a half, they get their decision after this escalation. If that doesn't happen, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks passed, and there is no answer, the best next step is to complain to your member of parliament or MP with the same details. Ideally, it helps to provide some personal explanation why this delay is affecting your guest. Like they're waiting in very unsafe conditions, they don't know what to do, like just some reason why they should expedite the decision. They do have connection to the Home Office, and Home Office must respond to the MP inquiries. So it's a good way. You will not get approval. It doesn't guarantee approval, but it will get you some sort of a decision or update, which is also helpful. Now, some people ask if it helps to reapply. I cannot give you a definite answer. Sometimes it helps, but generally, if your guest reapplies, they have to visit the visa application center again, because those biometrics and photos cannot be transferred from one application to the other. So that's a bit of an inconvenience. And all of those countdowns, they start from 0. So it's basically up to you if your guest visa is super delayed, and maybe if they are in Kyiv and it doesn't cost them much to visit the application center again, you may try. Okay, and now speaking of financial arrangements, obviously for sponsors, we know that sponsors get a thank you payment from the government. It's currently £350 a month. In some councils, in some regions, council decided to pay more, either to all guests or all sponsors, or to some sponsors who host for over a year. So it can be more, but it cannot be less, because 350 is a tariff that our central government gives to local councils for hosting Ukrainians. This payment is not paid if sponsor and guest are close relatives. So I didn't get anything because I sponsored my sister. It's also not paid if this is guest's second Homes for Ukraine scheme. Now, this is a new thing, because why would a guest have a second Homes for Ukraine scheme? It happens in cases when your guest had some Ukraine scheme visa, maybe like, okay, Homes for Ukraine. And then they lived in the UK for some time, and then they went abroad outside of the UK, and their visa expired when they were outside of the UK. Now, you cannot extend your visa if you're outside of the UK. So in that case, they had to apply for Homes for Ukraine again. So everything, all the steps, starting from scratch, find an eligible sponsor, go to the visa application center, pass all the checks. But what is a not so pleasant surprise is that central government doesn't give local councils a tariff for second Homes for Ukraine sponsorships. So if local council cannot claim those money from the government, they cannot pass those money onto the sponsor. So it's useful to check with candidates to be a guest if this is their first Homes for Ukraine scheme, and just be aware that if it's not the first time they've been sponsored, you may not get a thank you payment. Again, it's the local council that ultimately decides whether to pay you or not, but they will not get money from the central government. And thank you payments stop when a guest or guests move out. If they just go temporarily abroad for a week or so, thank you payments do not stop. But if they go for extended periods of time, like over 4 weeks, the thank you payment stops. It's just one payment per address. So regardless of the number of guests you host, it will be 350. And just to make things clear, sponsors are not expected to help with anything else but providing housing. So you're not expected to help with flights, food, anything else. You may as well if you like, but that's not required and not expected. Sponsors cannot charge rent, but sponsors are allowed to ask for a reasonable and proportionate contribution for utilities consumed by guests. So, for example, if they consume water, electricity, gas, we can divide the bill and ask them to pay their share. Guests will not impact your council tax discounts. So they are technically disregarded. So if you have a single person discount because you live alone, adding as many guests as you like to your property will not remove that single person discount. And thank you payments are also tax-free, and they do not affect your benefits or your pension payments. So it's a clean after-tax sum that you can get to cover for anything related to your guest or not. Now, for guests, what they get is they get a one-time arrival payment, but again, only for their first Homes for Ukraine visa. They get free onward travel by train, bus, coach, or light rail from the major airport to where you live. And this works within 48 hours of arriving in the UK. Here, I have to make a disclaimer. From personal experience, your guest will likely have to fight for this because currently not all of the station personnel are aware of this rule. And like my sister, when she arrived, she had to argue a little bit, citing gov.uk website, speaking with the senior staff at the station to be allowed to travel by rail for free. And they will have a right to work, rent, study, access benefits from day one, if they are eligible. Okay, support. So if you need any support, we have a collection of organizations that support Ukrainians in the UK. It's a good resource to give to your guests so they can start orienting themselves in our life here. For you as a sponsor, your local council is your first and main point of contact. Most of them have Ukraine teams. They will have like Ukraine email address you can write to. So if you have any concerns, questions, you can reach out to your local council. They will help. Ukrainian charities like us at Opora will be glad to help you. We have a Facebook group for sponsors, which you can join. And also Ukrainian organizations such as AUGB, so Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, they also have local branches with Ukrainian and English-speaking people. So you can look them up on the website, check when they meet, and come to the session if they have any sessions or drop-ins. It's very useful because if you have any issues with your guest, people from Ukrainian organizations can translate and explain both ways what is happening and maybe help you mediate any misunderstandings. For guests, same applies to them. They can join our chats. They can write to us at help.opora.uk. If they have any immigration issues, they can write to charities like Settled. Any problems with work rights, there are charities like Work Rights Center that help with that. And again, we redirect people to Citizens Advice Shelter with any relevant issues that those organizations help solve. And also guests can go to local councils, but there has to be the right expectation that councils are not experts in all the questions. And they're extremely busy, so maybe asking local council for help with the visa questions wouldn't be appropriate, and the quality of that help will not be the best, just because this is not what they specialize in. However, some of the housing questions, school matters, anything that falls within a remit of a local council, they will be happy to help. Now, on to Ukraine Permission Extension, which is, as the name suggests, an extension scheme for those Ukrainians whose initial visa expired or is about to expire, and they want to continue staying in the UK for a bit longer. Now, key facts about this scheme is that it's already open since early 2025. Ukrainians and people who came with them and have or had a Ukraine scheme visa before can apply. Now, this is important because some Ukrainians switched to other visas. For example, some switched to a work visa. And then if they lose their job and they want to extend their stay in the UK, they can still use UPE. It's a valid option. Also, if your guests have a new arrival in their family, they have a child born in the UK, this child has to also apply to the UPE. It's going to be their first visa in the UK. People have to apply on gov.uk within the last 28 days of their current visa. So basically, they look at their UKVI account. There will be a date valid until, and from that date, they count 28 days backwards. And within this period of last 28 days, in any day, they can apply. Again, separate application for each person, including children. They must provide biometrics. Some people do that via a mobile application called ID Check. Others have to go to the visa application center. It's not up to us or up to the applicant to decide. Basically, the system decides who has to go where. But in any case, the application goes into the queue for consideration after they applied and provided biometrics. Very critically, guests have to be physically in the UK at the time of applying, and they have to wait for their decision also in the UK. If they leave the UK before getting their visa decision, their application will be automatically withdrawn, and this means they will most likely lose the ability to extend their visa. Now, standard processing time is 8 weeks, and 95-96% of the applications actually fall within this period. Others might be delayed, and the steps are basically the same. If your guest's application is delayed, they have to escalate or reach out to the MP. The period of extension is 18 months since the date of decision. So if they applied, let's say their visa was till the 1st of May, and they applied mid-April, and they got their decision the next day, then UPE will start mid-April. And there will be a further extension for 24 months, but we don't know much about that. Again, UPE applications are all free of charge. Guests don't have to pay for the application itself. There is no need to pay for the visa application center visit. There are paid slots and free slots on a website. Paid slots are pure convenience. They do not influence the decision. They do not mean that the decision will be expedited. It's just purely for convenience of choosing the best times and getting there earlier. Free slots are usually available within 1-2 weeks. Last time I checked. Now, also it's important that guests have 60 days from the day of submitting their application online to provide biometrics. And their visa can end, but that's fine if they applied already online. They stay in the UK legally, and they still have like 60 days to arrange a biometrics appointment. So no need to panic if there are no appointments within the next week and their visa ends in a week. No worries, schedule it in 2-3 weeks. It's not going to impact their immigration status. There are no financial or housing requirements. Guest benefit situation does not influence any visa decisions. There is no need to engage lawyers or any helpers. It's a very simple application, and we have a step-by-step video on our Opora Telegram channel, which will help your friends, your guests apply without any issues. It takes about maybe 20 to 40 minutes to fill in the application and schedule an appointment. So it's not that hard. The only complication is that when your guest had some extended periods of living outside of the UK and outside of Ukraine, extended means for over 12 months, then they will need to provide evidence of ongoing ties to the UK. What does that mean in practice is that they have to explain to the visa team that there is some reason for them to be in the UK, be that their family or work or study, that they rent already, that they are not just visiting and they are not using this UPE visa as a tourist visa. Now, for you as a sponsor, there is one step that you'll need to make if your guest still lives with you. You will need to reapply for thank you payments with your local consul after your guest UPE visa is approved. So you just need to inform them that, hey, they extended their visas. You can provide their share codes as a proof, and then consul will just keep paying you the same thank you payment. So key changes for sponsors, they were announced almost a year ago, is that thank you payments are now $350 per month per address, that payments are extended for 18 months of the UPE. So within the UPE 1, the first extension, if your guest still lives with you, you will get thank you payments. and that sponsors will not get payments if guest is their close family member. Now, in the same announcement, government mentioned that guests are very much encouraged to plan for independent living and to look for rent, which we have to say is extremely challenging. So that was a good heads up from the government. It's worth having this conversation with your guests about their plans for the future. I'm going to have a few points later in the presentation about practical things, what they can do. One of these is a rent-a-room scheme, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. If you'd like to read this letter, it's available on gov.uk website as well. All right, so what happens when sponsorship ends? If you decide to end sponsorship, either by agreement with your guest, or maybe they want to move out, they have a couple of options. And the best option that we promote as much as possible since 2022 is to actually be independent and rent from a private landlord. Your guests will need a strategy. They will need a lot of energy and grit, because it usually takes from 1 month to 3 months to find a rental. They will have to make dozens of contacts, which might be quite challenging if they don't speak English. They must pass the affordability checks, provide a guarantor, sometimes pay rent in advance. So we advise that all Ukrainians, from the first day coming to the UK, they start thinking and budgeting for this move, because it's a temporary arrangement. We also have an elaborate guidance on how to rent. We have a webinar, and we have a guide in writing in Ukrainian with all the steps laid out, with all the advice, and we suggest that you pass this on to your guests if they think of renting, because that's the right thing to do. Worse, much worse option is presenting to their local council as homeless. We all know how challenging the homeless situation is and how huge are the queues for social housing. So needless to say, this applies to Ukrainians. And those stories that we hear are not always pleasant. Guests are moved between temporary accommodations, sometimes multiple times. Their children get uprooted from schools they went to. So it's not a very pleasant experience, and option number one of renting independently is much, much better. And then there is a third option, which is what the government promoted. If you're happy to keep living with your guest and they're happy to live with you, you can become their landlord. It's called rent-a-room scheme. Requires minimal paperwork, no relocation challenges. If you still enjoy living together with your guest, that is an option. And because not everyone knows about it, I wanted to double click and describe this in more detail. So what is a rent-a-room scheme? Or it's also called resident landlord. If you search on gov.uk, it's basically a scheme that allows any person, if you have a spare room in your home, to rent it to a lodger. It has to be your only or main home, and you live there as well. So you just rent a spare room. That's why it's a rent-a-room scheme. You can rent out as much of your home as you want. It can be one room, can be more, depending on your setup. And the beauty of this scheme is that there is a sum of money, 7,500 a year, that is tax exempt. So if you earn less than this, you have no taxes on this amount, and you don't have to submit any paperwork to HMRC, so no need to do anything. That's your tax-free income. And it's much more flexible than standard tenancy. It's like a simpler eviction process, no deposit protection. So you don't have to go through all the hurdles of being a landlord, which isn't an easy job. It's a simplified process exactly for people who want to take a lodger and get a little bit of extra money on the side. Now, you as a landlord, resident landlord, you keep paying council tax. Bills are usually included in rent. You have to keep home in a habitable condition. It must be furnished, but otherwise the rules are pretty relaxed. Now, lodgers, your ex-guests will be called lodgers. They can pay rent on their own from their pocket, or they can cover it partially or in full through normal benefits like housing benefit or housing payment of the universal credit. And they can have different setups of agreement with you in terms of the paperwork. Now, all the details are here on gov.uk. It's called Rent a Room in Your Home page. And I decided to give you a useful comparison, like what it is, Homes for Ukraine versus Rent a Room, because actually you can switch to Rent a Room scheme at any time after your guest arrived. So you don't have to wait till the end of a 6 months period or till the end of the UPE. It's just between yourselves. So a quick comparison table comparing those two schemes. And one example that just a practical example of a sponsor and a guest who decided to switch to Rent a Room scheme. So let's say two of them live in a 2-bed home. So there's a sponsor. She has a 25% single person discount on council tax, and the guest is on universal credit. She doesn't work at the moment. She's actively looking for a job, and she gets just a minimal payment through universal credit. And from that payment, she contributes towards bills. So that's their current arrangement. And currently, Anna, our sponsor, she gets $350 a month. That's her income from thank you payments. For this guest, she is disregarded for council tax, so it's just normal payment for the sponsor. She gets £100 for bills. There is no income tax on any of these because they are tax exempt. So basically 450 is what Anna, our sponsor, gets for sponsoring this guest. With Rent a Room, let's say she decides to charge the maximum payment that is tax-free, which would be $625 a month. Now, her guest will impact her council tax a little bit. It will go up £33 a month because guest is no longer tax exempt. She will have to include bills into rent, but this guest will be able to cover partially her rent through universal credit. So actually our sponsor will end up having more income from this now lodging agreement or rent room agreement than she previously got from Homes for Ukraine. For her guest, it doesn't change things much because she will get this almost fully covered through housing benefit or housing element of universal credit. So it looks like a win-win solution. If you like living with your guest, it's an option. If you feel like maybe it's better for them to live independently, then all the resources about finding rent would be very useful and help your guest move on to independent living. Now, what happens when the guest's Ukraine permission extension ends? So those 18 months that they get now. Bad news is that Ukraine scheme visas do not contribute to the residency period that counts for indefinite leave to remain. So your guest is not progressing to stay in here forever. But great news is that there will be a further 24 months UPE2 extension. So that's some hope for stability for Ukrainians. And maybe when the war ends, they can come back to Ukraine finally. But if they want to stay here, there are other visas that they may switch to. If they are eligible, there are no preferences for Ukrainians, so they have to match all the standard requirements for either a work visa or spouse or partner visa or student or a special health and care worker visa. Now, it will take forever to describe the conditions of those visas. I just have to say they are very, very strict, each one of them in its own way. So we wrote detailed guides and published them on Opora website about each one of those. And you can share them with your guest. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to the website with all the guides. And finally, here's one thing that we get asked about a lot. Can they submit an asylum application? Can they apply for humanitarian protection? So can they go a standard asylum route in the UK? Because people whose asylum application is approved, they are officially recognized as refugees, and there is a path to settlement in the UK, even though this path is long. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer, it's a volunteer session, but since we receive lots of questions about it, I will briefly cover the current situation. And generally, we do not endorse this route because it exists for people who are being personally prosecuted by their home country, in this case, Ukraine. The asylum process is very long, it's very painful, and the outcome is not really guaranteed. And we know that there are lots of lawyers active on Instagram and TikTok promoting this as an easy route, but it's by no means easy. And submitting false claim with facts that are not fully true may have very, very serious consequences for those people. Not to mention that those applications are very costly because those lawyers charge like £5,000 per person for each of those applications. So it's not a viable option for people on the Ukraine scheme. And as of the latest published stats, which was for Q3 2025, the refusal rate for this route for Ukrainians was 95%. So only 5% of applications got approved. So it's a very painful route, and we just advise all the people to stop and think before taking it. All right, that was the last slide. And I think we have some time for questions. So, Yulia, do we have any?
Yes, we are. The first question was, what are the visa approval times at the moment? You answer for this question, sorry. Are UK airports offering free parking when collecting guests?
Good question. No, I haven't heard of it. At least in the north, where I live, unfortunately, sponsors have to pay for parking. So maybe it's better to equip your guest with gov.uk link explaining free travel, free onward travel for people holding Homes for Ukraine visa. Maybe be ready to answer the call and explain over the phone to the station personnel that it is indeed true. But as I said, it will take some effort to persuade them. For free parking, I've not heard of it since 2023.
Next questions. Why are three questions about housing on the UPE application, about numbers of rooms, numbers of people, and who living with?
That's a bit of a mystery to me as well. Answers to those questions, they do not impact the outcome of the application, because if you read them carefully, they just ask you how many people live there, how many bedrooms, etc. But they do not ask you to provide any evidence of this. Basically, you just have to inform the visa team where you live and what are your arrangements. My assumption is that those questions are statistical. They don't impact anything.
Thank you. What happens if a child turns 18 while in the UK under the Homes for Ukraine scheme? If they live in the UK or go back to Ukraine, can they still return to the UK?
Okay, so regardless of age, in order to return to the UK, you have to have a valid visa. So as long as they have a valid visa, they can come back to the UK. Now, I think I know where this question is coming from. Here's a situation. Currently, if a child leaves the UK for some reason and their visa expires outside of the UK, let's say they went on holiday and they forgot to extend their visa and it expires when they are somewhere in Spain enjoying the sun, their parents can go back to the UK and sponsor them as a child. It's a big inconvenience because this child will have to stay outside of the UK. They will have to wait for a visa decision, 1 to 4 weeks normally. Someone will have to take care of them, take them to the visa application center, but at least it's doable. Like, parents can resolve this issue on their own. Now, if this person goes outside of the UK with a valid visa, they were, let's say, 17, and their visa expired when, again, they are in Spain, but now they are 18. Exemption for their parents, allowing them to sponsor this person, this child, who is no longer a child, no longer applies. So this 18-year-old will have to find an eligible sponsor for themselves, and their parents will no longer be able to reunite with them if those parents are on Ukraine visas. So if that is the case, well, be careful.
Thank you, Galina. Next question. Is 7,500 tax-free if you are already a landlord in other rental properties?
Okay, very good question. My level of confidence in this answer is quite low, but I think it's exempt from tax if you live with this person in this property that you rent to them as a landlord, as a residential landlord. You may have other income from other properties or self-employment, etc. This 7,500 is basically tax-free, but I would double check with my accountant just to be sure.
Does the rent-a-room scheme work if our guests are in our second home?
No, unfortunately. It's a must-have requirement that you have to live with them in the same property, which makes you a residential landlord.
Will it be a problem if I already have a temporary protection in other country?
Okay, I assume this question comes from a potential guest. Now, the answer is no. If you go to go.uk website and read the requirements for a guest, there is nothing, absolutely nothing about other countries and other temporary protections there. But it's not quite the same the other way around. So if you get a Homes for Ukraine visa, and then you decide to go back to, let's say, Germany, Netherlands, elsewhere, those countries may have their requirements. They may refuse you temporary protection on the grounds that you already have a humanitarian visa from the UK.
Are there any limits on the number of people that can be sponsored over time?
Technically, no. You can sponsor any number of people. You can sponsor 2 groups of people, 3 groups of people that are not related to each other, they're not in a family. If you have a huge estate, you have lots of space and you have enough space for all of them and your council approves, you can sponsor all of them. You can sponsor multiple families or people in sequence. So one comes in, they live with you for a while, they move on to rental accommodation, you inform the council that they moved out, and you sponsor the next guest. And we know many people, very kind people, who do that for the 4th, 3rd, 5th time. What councils really do not like, and they may ban you as a sponsor, is when you sponsor someone, this guest comes to the UK and immediately presents themselves as homeless to the council. Then council may think or suspect that this was not a genuine sponsorship, and they may not approve you as a sponsor next time. But that's the only issue. If everything's okay, if your guests are okay, there are no conflicts, they move on to rental accommodation or to live with their friends or family, and you sponsor the next guest, there is no limit at all.
Thank you. Next question. I used to live in the UK in 2022, then I came back home. My previous host can expect me second time. Can I have some money for the first? I don't understand these questions. Do you mean can your sponsor maybe have a thank you payment? No?
I think I know what this is about. So this is exactly about the second Homes for Ukraine application. And yes, your previous host can sponsor you again if they have enough space, if they're happy to do it, but local council may not approve them for thank you payment. So if this is clear from day one and you both are okay with that, you and your sponsor, absolutely they can sponsor you again. It's going to be the same process. With regards to all the payments that you will get as a guest, you will not get a £200 arrival payment, because that is a one-time payment and you probably received it back in 2022. With regards to right to work, study benefits, those will continue, restart from the date your visa is approved. So you can come here to the UK, you can go, you can work. If you don't have enough money while you're getting up to speed with work, you can get some help through benefits.
It looks like the similar questions. Will thank you payments continue on the UPE2 scheme? No.
So right now, how the wording says on gov.uk website, I read it as thank you payments will not continue under UPE2. Like everything they write, how they write this announcement, how they encourage guests to move on to a rental accommodation, how they advertise the rent-a-room scheme, all of that suggests that there will be no budget for continuing thank you payment. That said, some councils may decide on their local level from their local budgets to continue paying some money to prevent homelessness. But that is probably going to be a rare occasion. So let's assume they will not continue and plan accordingly.
Thank you. Can my partner be my sponsor, and will the fact of us receiving a deny or tourist visa influences the Homes for Ukraine visa?
Okay, there are two parts to this question. Can my partner be my sponsor? If your partner is a British or Irish national, so they have British or Irish passport or citizenship, or they are settled in the UK, so they have the right to live here permanently, then yes, if they have enough space in their home, they can be your sponsor. Even easier, it's even easier if you are in a relationship, if you are partners, because in that case, council will treat you as a couple and they will allow you to live in the same room, which wouldn't be allowed if you were not partners, if you were just like people who never met before. So yes, under all the standard conditions, your partner who lives here in the UK and can provide you with space, they can sponsor you. Now, if you had refusal of a tourist visa or standard visitor visa before, this does not impact your chances to get a Homes for Ukraine visa, unless that refusal came with a ban. So sometimes, it's rare, but sometimes if you submit a tourist visa application and something is super wrong there, for example, they think some of the documents you supplied as an evidence are fraudulent, they may punish you with not just a refusal, but they will tell you that you cannot come to the UK for another 10 years. So if there is no such ban, just a refusal, maybe just the paperwork was not enough, or maybe you did not prove that you're going to leave the UK or something else, we don't know, that does not influence your chances for Homes for Ukraine visa. Again, it's different if it's the other way around. If your Homes for Ukraine visa was refused, and then you, shortly after that, you try to apply for a tourist visa, that will likely be refused. Because, well, they understand that your intention is to come and to live here for quite a long time, which is exactly the opposite of what tourist visa is for. So just be mindful that some combination may increase your chances of being refused, but what you're describing, if you are denied tourist visa and then you apply for sponsorship visa, if everything's correct, you shouldn't be refused.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's all. So thank you very much, Galina, for this clear and informative presentation. Thank you, everyone who joined us today and share your questions. We really appreciate your time and your support. And as mentioned, the recording of this webinar will be available later on Opora website and in our Facebook group. We hope today's session was helpful and gave you more clarify and confidence in all of this information. And thank you again for being with us. Have a good evening.
Cheers.
Bye. Take care.